Will you be there for us? We are tired of the babysitter our daddy assigned to us. She's always on the phone. Our daddy is never around, never present, always busy.
Kang Joon-ho flipped the table. Not because he was angry. He was always angry. He flipped it because the man sitting across from him had just made the mistake of lying to his face twice, and Joon-ho had a rule about second lies. They cost something. The restaurant went silent. Every fork froze midair. Every conversation died. Even the soft jazz playing from the ceiling speakers seemed to hold its breath. Joon-ho straightened his jacket, smoothed the front of his charcoal suit, and looked down at the man now pressed against the wall with marinara sauce on his shirt. "Clean yourself up," Joon-ho said quietly. "And wire the money back by Thursday. All of it." He didn't wait for an answer. He never did. His table, the corner table, the one the restaurant permanently reserved for him every Thursday evening, was now the only upright table in that section. He walked back to it, sat down, and picked up his water glass like nothing had happened. Around him, 3 bodyguards returned to their positions. The other diners slowly, carefully, resumed breathing. Joon-ho was used to silence following him into rooms. He was used to people moving out of his way before he even got close. He was 38 years old, had built an empire on fear and precision, and had not once, not in 20 years, been caught off guard. Until 2 small hands touched his arm. He didn't flinch. Flinching was for people who weren't prepared. But something shifted behind his eyes, something fast and unreadable, as he looked down and found 2 little girls standing beside his chair. They were identical. Dark brown skin, sharp Korean eyes. 2 matching yellow dresses that had seen better days. One of them had a small cut on her knee. The other was clutching a stuffed rabbit with one ear missing. They couldn't have been older than 5. The one without the rabbit spoke first. She looked directly at him. Not at the floor, not at his bodyguards, directly at him, with the kind of eye contact that made grown men uncomfortable. "Are you eating alone?" she asked. Joon-ho stared at her. "Zoe," the other twin whispered, tugging her sister's sleeve. "You said I could say it. You were too slow, Nova. That's not fair." "I'm eating alone," Joon-ho said flatly, cutting through their argument. "Go find your parents." Neither of them moved. Zoe tilted her head. "We don't have parents. Not right now." "Not right now," Nova repeated, nodding seriously. Something about the way they said it, not sad, not performing, just honest, made Joon-ho's jaw tighten. He looked past them, scanning the restaurant. No panicked adult rushing over. No frantic mother calling their names. Just 2 5-year-olds standing beside the most dangerous man in Seoul like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Where is whoever brought you here?" he asked. Zoe pointed toward the restaurant entrance. "Our babysitter. She's outside crying because her boyfriend called." "She's been crying for a long time," Nova added. "We got hungry." Joon-ho looked at his bodyguard, Tae-sung, who was already moving toward the entrance to verify. Then he looked back at the twins. "Sit down," he said. He didn't know why he said it. Zoe was already climbing into the chair across from him before he finished the sentence. Nova followed, settling the one-eared rabbit carefully on the table like it deserved its own seat. "I'm Zoe," Zoe said. "That's Nova. And that's Rabbit." "Rabbit only has one ear," Nova explained, "because Zoe chewed the other one when she was a baby." "I was nervous," Zoe said, completely unbothered. Joon-ho said nothing. He picked up his menu, mostly to have something to look at that wasn't 2 pairs of expectant eyes staring at him across a dinner table. A waiter appeared, visibly terrified, clearly unsure whether to address the children or pretend they weren't there. "They'll have whatever they want," Joon-ho said, without looking up. Comment below. Did you expect him to let them sit down? Keep watching. The food arrived faster than it ever had at that restaurant. Zoe ordered ramen and orange juice. Nova wanted japchae and milk. They ate without ceremony, without the performance of politeness, just 2 hungry little girls eating dinner across from a man who had, 20 minutes ago, thrown furniture at someone. Joon-ho watched them without meaning to. There was something about their faces, not just the striking combination of features, the warm brown skin, the distinctly Korean slope of their eyes, but the way they moved through the world, unbothered, unafraid. Like they hadn't yet learned that certain people were supposed to be scary. You have a mean face, Zoe said suddenly, not looking up from her ramen. Nova kicked her under the table. What? Zoe said. He does. But it's okay. Our uncle has a mean face too, and he's actually nice. Uncle Jay cries at dramas, Nova told Junho confidentially. Don't tell people that, Zoe said. He told us not to tell Dad. He didn't say anything about strangers. Junho set down his water glass. Where is your father? The shift was immediate. Not dramatic. These weren't dramatic children, but something quieted between them. Zoe stirred her ramen. Nova straightened Rabbit's position on the table. He's busy, Zoe said. He's always busy, Nova said. He's a billionaire, Zoe added, like that explained everything. And perhaps, Junho thought, to a 5-year-old it did. Marcus Moon, Junho said. It wasn't a question. He'd heard the name. Everyone in certain circles had. Korean-American tech billionaire, based in Seoul for the past year, known for his money and his absence. Junho hadn't known he had children. He hadn't known he had a family at all. Both girls looked at him with new attention. You know our dad? Nova asked. I know of him. Do you know why he's always busy? Zoe asked. There was something underneath the question. Something that had been asked before, probably to adults who gave unsatisfying answers. Junho looked at her. No. Zoe nodded, like she appreciated the honesty more than a comfortable eye. She went back to her ramen. Taesung appeared at Junho's shoulder and leaned down. The babysitter is outside, still on the phone. She doesn't know they came inside. Junho's eyes narrowed. Which babysitter leaves 2 5-year-olds unattended in a public place? Her name is Kezia, Taesung said carefully. She's been outside for almost 30 minutes. Sounds like a bad situation on that call. Junho said nothing for a moment. Whatever Kezia's situation was, it didn't change what had happened. Find out who's responsible for these children tonight and make the call, he said finally. Taesung nodded and disappeared. Nova was watching Junho with large, careful eyes. Are you going to send us away? Someone needs to come get you. Our dad won't come, Zoe said, simply, without bitterness. That was the part that hit hardest, the absence of bitterness. Like she had already made peace with the fact she was too young to have to accept. He'll send someone. He always sends someone. The table was quiet for a moment. Then Nova leaned forward. She glanced at her sister. Something passed between them. The kind of silent conversation that only twins and people who have survived things together can have. Zoe gave a small nod. Nova turned back to Junho. Can you pretend to be our dad? She whispered. Just until someone comes. So we're not alone. If you're already hooked, subscribe. This story gets much deeper. Junho did not move. In 20 years, no one had ever asked him for something and caught him this completely unprepared. Enemies had pointed guns at him. Rivals had threatened everyone he loved. Politicians had tried to buy him and failed. None of it had ever produced this particular feeling. This strange, airless sensation in his chest, like something had reached through his ribs and squeezed. You don't know me, he said. You let us sit down, Zoe said, as if that settled the matter entirely. Mean people don't let you sit down. They also don't order us food, Nova added. I ordered you food because you were hungry. That's what dads do, Nova said. Junho looked at these 2 small, impossible children and felt something move in him that he hadn't felt in a very long time. He didn't name it. He wasn't ready to name it. I'm not your father, he said. We know, Zoe said. We're not stupid. We just want someone to sit with us so we don't feel like nobody wants us. She said it without drama, without tears. But the words landed like stones dropping into still water. So we don't feel like nobody wants us. Junho had felt that once. He remembered exactly what it felt like. He was 7 years old, sitting in a government building in Busan with a paper number in his hand, waiting to find out which direction his life would go. No one had sat with him. No one had pretended. He picked up his menu again. I'm not pretending to be anyone, he said. But I'm not leaving this table until someone responsible arrives. So you're not sitting alone. Zoe considered this. That's basically the same thing. It's not. It kind of is, Nova said. Junho said nothing. But he didn't leave the table. They stayed for 40 minutes. Zoe talked almost the entire time. About her kindergarten teacher, who she found boring, about a cartoon she and Nova disagreed about the time their father had promised to take them to Jeju Island, and then sent his assistant instead. The assistant was nice, Nova said fairly. That's not the point, Zoe said. What's the point? Junho asked. And he wasn't sure when he'd started asking questions instead of just waiting for someone to come collect them. Zoe looked at him very seriously. The point is that when you promise something, you should do it yourself. Not send someone else to do the feeling for you. Junho was quiet for a long moment. You're 5 years old. 5.5, Nova corrected. Where did you hear that? Zoe shrugged one small shoulder. I didn't hear it anywhere. I thought it. I think a lot. She paused. Nova thinks a lot too, but mostly about food and rabbit. That's true, Nova agreed peacefully. His phone buzzed. A message from Taesung. Their household manager is on the way. 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Junho set the phone down. Nova was looking at Rabbit with a thoughtful expression. Then she picked the stuffed animal up and placed it carefully in front of Junho. He stared at it. Rabbit helps when things feel heavy, she said. You look like things feel heavy. I'm fine. You flipped a table earlier, Zoe said. You saw that. Everyone saw that. Junho looked at the one-eared rabbit sitting in front of him on a white tablecloth in the middle of a restaurant that still hadn't fully recovered its normal noise level. He looked at two 5-year-old girls who had walked up to the most feared man in Seoul and asked him to sit with them. Something shifted in him. Quietly, irreversibly. Keep your rabbit, he said, and pushed it gently back toward Nova. She took it, satisfied. Han Yirin arrived at exactly the wrong moment, or perhaps the right one, depending on how you looked at it. She walked into the restaurant with her tablet under her arm, and her eyes already scanning, the way they always scanned, cataloging exits and threats and anomalies. She found Junho at his corner table, which was not unusual. She found him sitting across from two small children, which was extraordinarily unusual. She found him listening, actually listening, while the louder one explained something with her hands, and she stopped walking entirely. In 6 years of working for Kang Junho, Yirin had seen him negotiate with crime lords. She had seen him dismantle 3 rival organizations without raising his voice. She had watched him sit in a hospital waiting room for 9 hours without moving when his lieutenant took a bullet meant for him. She had never seen him look like this, like something had been quietly unlocked. She approached carefully, the way you approach something you don't want to startle. Boss, she said. Junho looked up. Something in his face rearranged itself back into its usual arrangement. Controlled, unreadable, but not fast enough. The Moon Children's household manager is here, Yirin said. She glanced at the twins. I can take them out. We're not done eating, Zoe said, without looking at Yirin. Yirin blinked. In 6 years, no one had ever interrupted Junho's business with that kind of casual authority. Let them finish, Junho said. Yirin sat down at the edge of the table quietly and watched her boss of 6 years make sure 2 5-year-olds had enough napkins. She didn't say anything, but she filed it away deep somewhere important. Because, in her experience, the moments that changed everything never announced themselves. They just happened quietly, over dinner. Outside, Kezia stood against the wall near the restaurant entrance. Phone pressed to her ear, eyes wet, voice low and shaking. I told you I'm working, Dre. I can't do this right now. She pressed her free hand to her forehead. I know I said that. But the girls. She stopped, turned, looked through the glass front of the restaurant, and felt the blood leave her face. The table where she had left Zoe and Nova, the table she had told them not to move from, not for anything, not for 5 minutes while she stepped outside, was empty. Dre, I have to go. She hung up before he could answer. She was through the door in 3 seconds, scanning the restaurant with the sharp, panicked eyes of someone who already knew they had made a terrible mistake. Her gaze swept past the overturned table near the window, past the nervous waitstaff, past the bodyguards positioned like furniture around the room, and landed on 2 small yellow dresses at the corner table. She crossed the restaurant in long strides, and when she reached them, She crouched down between the twins' chairs and grabbed both their hands at once. Zoe. Nova. Her voice was tight, trying to hold steady. Baby, are you okay? Are you hurt? We're fine, Kezia, Zoe said. We got hungry. You can't just. Kezia stopped herself. She looked up at the man sitting across from them, at the 3 bodyguards, at the overturned table still visible behind her. Her throat moved. I'm so sorry, she said to Junho. I only stepped out for a minute. I didn't know they were hungry, Junho said. His voice was even. Not warm, but not cold either. They're fine. Kezia looked at him for a moment. Something in his face, the steadiness of it, the lack of threat in that particular moment, made her exhale slowly. Thank you, she said quietly, for looking after them. Junho said nothing. He looked at the twins. Nova was already sliding off her chair, rabbit tucked under her arm. Zoe climbed down after her, smoothing the front of her dress with the seriousness of someone concluding important business. Then, in unison, they both turned to Junho. Thank you for sitting with us, Nova said. You didn't actually pretend to be our dad, Zoe said, but you stayed. That was better anyway. Junho said nothing. What was there to say? Zoe reached into the pocket of her yellow dress and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. She set it on the table in front of him with the gravity of someone delivering a legal document. That's our address, she said. In case you want to check if we're okay. Why would I need to check if you're okay? Zoe looked at him with those steady, ancient eyes. Because no one else does, she said. And then she turned and followed Kezia toward the exit, Nova half a step behind her. Junho did not watch them leave. He looked at the folded piece of paper on the white tablecloth. He looked at it for a long time. Then he picked it up. 3 days passed. Junho did not go to the address. He told himself it was because he had no reason to. He was not a social worker. He was not a family friend. He was a man who had shared a dinner table with 2 lost children and then returned to his life, which was complicated and dangerous, and had no room in it for small yellow dresses and one-eared rabbits. He put the folded paper in his desk drawer. Then he moved it to his jacket pocket. Then he put it back in the drawer. On the 4th day, Yurin walked into his office with a tablet and a look on her face that meant she had information he hadn't asked for, but was going to receive anyway. Don't, he said, without looking up from the documents in front of him. I didn't say anything. You have your saying something face. Yurin set the tablet on his desk. On the screen was a photograph. Marcus Moon at a charity gala the previous evening, in a fitted tuxedo, laughing at something the woman beside him had said. He looked relaxed, unbothered, like a man with no weight on him at all. Junho looked at the photograph for a long moment. When was the last time he saw them? 11 days ago, Yurin said. Breakfast. 20 minutes. He had a flight to catch. 11 days. Junho thought about Zoe's voice when she said he'll send someone. He always sends someone. He thought about how she had said it, not like a complaint, but like a weather report. Like it was simply a condition of her life that she had learned to dress for. And their mother, he asked. Yurin's expression shifted. Just slightly. Moon Sujin passed away 14 months ago. Cardiac event. She was 32. The office was quiet. Junho leaned back in his chair. 32 years old. 2 daughters, 4 years old at the time. A husband whose response to grief, apparently, was to fill his calendar until there was no space left to feel anything. He understood that. In a way, he didn't want to examine too closely. That's all, he said. Yurin picked up her tablet. She was almost at the door when she stopped. They're enrolled in Sabiel Kindergarten. Drop-off is at 8:30. Kezia takes them every morning because Mr. Moon's driver has standing instructions not to adjust the morning schedule. She paused. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just telling you. She left before he could respond. He went to the kindergarten. Not at drop-off. He wasn't ready for that, and he was honest enough with himself to know it. He went at pickup at 3:15 in the afternoon, and he sat in his car across the street and told himself he was just checking, just confirming they were fine. After that, he would return to his life, and the paper in his drawer would become meaningless, and this would be over. He watched Kezia arrive at 3:10, 5 minutes early, in a dark green coat with a tote bag over one shoulder. She stood at the gate with two other parents, checking her phone, glancing up every few seconds the way people do when they are waiting for something they love. When the doors opened and children began streaming out, Junho watched Kezia's whole face change. The phone went into her pocket. She crouched down with her arms open, and Zoe and Nova hit her like small, joyful projectiles, one on each side, nearly knocking her backwards. He could hear Nova laughing from across the street. Something tightened in his throat. He was about to start the car when Zoe pulled back from Kezia's arms and looked around. It was a particular kind of looking, not searching for anything specific, just scanning, the way children do when something in them is always half waiting for someone who doesn't come. Her eyes crossed the street and landed directly on Junho's car. He didn't move. The windows were tinted. There was no way she could see him. But Zoe Moon stared at his car for a long, still moment with those ancient, knowing eyes. And then she raised her small hand and waved. Junho sat very still. Then, without entirely deciding to, he raised his hand back. He was at the gate the next morning at 8:20. He didn't examine the decision. He got up, put on a jacket that wasn't his usual charcoal suit, something simpler, less architectural, and told Taesung to drive him to Seoul kindergarten. Taesung asked no questions. This was one of the things Junho valued most about him. Kezia saw him first. She was lifting Nova out of the back seat of a silver SUV when she noticed him standing near the gate. Her expression went through several things in quick succession: recognition, surprise, wariness, before settling into something careful and measured. "Mr. Kong," she said. Zoe's head snapped around. Her face did the opposite of careful and measured. It did something open and immediate and unguarded, the way only children's faces can. "You came," she said. "Just that. You came." Like it was the simplest and most significant thing in the world. Nova scrambled down from the car and stood beside her sister, clutching Rabbit, staring at Junho with wide eyes. "I was in the area," Junho said. Zoe looked at him with the frank assessment of a child who has not yet learned to accept comfortable lies from adults. "Our school is not near anything," she said. "We're 40 minutes from the restaurant." Junho said nothing. Kezia watched this exchange with her arms folded and an expression that was working very hard to stay neutral. She had questions. He could see them lined up behind her eyes, but she was holding them, biding her time. Nova took 3 steps forward and held Rabbit out toward Junho. "You can hold him today," she said, "if you want." Junho crouched down to her level. Up close, Nova's eyes were enormous and serious. Her small face tilted up at him, with an offering in her hands. Behind her, Zoe watched without speaking for once, which meant this mattered. "I thought Rabbit was yours," he said. "He is," Nova said, "but I'm lending him. For the day. So you have something." "Something," he repeated. "Something that's yours for a little while," Nova said, with the careful grammar of a child who has thought about this. "Even if it's not really yours." Junho looked at this child, 5 years old, with her mother 14 months in the ground and her father 11 days gone, offering her most prized possession to a near stranger because she had decided he needed it. He took the rabbit. Nova beamed. Kezia fell into step beside him as the twins ran ahead toward the school entrance. "Mr. Kong," she said, her voice low and even. "I appreciate what you did at the restaurant. Genuinely. But I need to ask you something directly." "Ask." "Why are you here?" Junho watched Zoe hold the gate open for a smaller child who was struggling with it. "I don't have a clean answer for that." "I need some kind of answer," Kezia said. "Because those girls," she stopped. Choose her words. "They attach. Especially Nova. She was attached to their mother's doctor for 3 months after Sujin passed because he was kind to her once in a waiting room. These children are hungry for something, and I won't let them build something on a foundation that's going to disappear." Junho stopped walking. He looked at Kezia fully for the first time. She was maybe 30, with steady eyes and the particular posture of someone who has appointed themselves a wall between something precious and the rest of the world. He respected that. "I'm not going to disappear this morning," he said. "Beyond that, I can't promise you anything. But I don't make promises I can't keep. Kezia studied him. Zoe said that about you. What did she say? She said you were the first adult in a long time who didn't tell them what they wanted to hear. She paused. In her words, you have a mean face, but you stayed. Something moved across Junho's expression. Brief and unguarded. She talks a lot. She talks constantly, Kezia said. But there was a warmth in it. Fierce and protective. Nova feels everything, and Zoe says everything. Between the two of them, they're one complete, overwhelming person. She looked at him. Don't hurt them. I'm not here to hurt anyone. Good, Kezia said simply, and walked ahead to where the twins were waiting at the school entrance. At the door, Zoe grabbed Junho's sleeve. Will you be here at pickup? She asked. I don't know. That means maybe. It means I don't know. Zoe considered this with the gravity of a judge weighing evidence. Okay, she said finally. But if you come, can we go somewhere after? Just for a little while. Kezia lets us go places after school sometimes. Where do you want to go? Zoe looked at Nova. The silent conversation. Nova gave one small, serious nod. Wherever you go, Zoe said. We just want to see what your life looks like. Junho stared at her. My life is not, he stopped. My life is not suitable for children, was the honest ending of that sentence, and he knew it. He also knew that Zoe knew it, and was asking anyway, because the wanting was bigger than the knowing. I'll think about it, he said. Zoe nodded, satisfied, and disappeared through the school doors. Nova paused, turned back, and pointed at the rabbit in Junho's hand. Take care of him, she said. I will. She nodded very seriously and followed her sister inside. Junho stood at the school gate for a moment after they were gone, holding a stuffed rabbit with one ear in a neighborhood 40 minutes from anything familiar, with Taesung waiting silently by the car and Kezia watching him from 3 meters away with folded arms and careful eyes. He looked down at the rabbit. Something that's yours for a little while, even if it's not really yours. He thought about a folded piece of paper in a desk drawer. He thought about a corner table at a restaurant and a question he hadn't been prepared for. He thought about a 7-year-old boy in a government building in Busan with a paper number in his hand, and how that boy had grown into this, into a man who had built a fortress out of fear and called it a life. He thought about what it meant that 2 5-year-old girls had walked through every wall of that fortress without even noticing it was there. He was at pickup at 3:15. He told himself he was there because he had nothing else scheduled. This was not true. Yurin had messaged him twice about a meeting he had quietly rearranged, and he had not responded to either message, which was unprecedented and which she would have questions about later. Zoe came through the doors first, as he suspected she always did. She saw him, stopped, and for one unguarded second her face did something so purely happy that it hit him in the chest like a physical thing. Then she composed herself, actually composed herself, at 5 years old, and walked toward him with measured steps. You came back, she said. I said maybe. Maybe became yes. This time. Zoe nodded, accepting the boundary without argument. Then Nova emerged behind her, saw Junho, and did not compose herself at all. She ran directly at him and held her arms up with the complete confidence of a child who has decided, without consulting anyone, that she is allowed to be held. Junho froze. Kezia, arriving behind them, watched with an expression she was very carefully keeping off her face. Nova's arms were still up. She was looking at him with enormous patient eyes. Junho picked her up. It was the most foreign thing he had done in 20 years. His arms didn't know what to do with the weight of her, the warm, small, absolute weight of a child who had simply decided to trust him. Nova settled against his shoulder like it was a place she had been before and put one hand on his jaw. You came back, she said quietly, into his ear. I came back, he said. They went to a park near the school. Not his world, not the restaurants and boardrooms and backroom negotiations, just a park with benches and pigeons and a small fountain that Zoe tried to put her hand in before Kezia redirected her. Junho sat on a bench. Nova sat beside him with Rabbit on her lap. Zoe paced in front of him with the energy of someone delivering a presentation. Our dad has a park, Zoe said, on top of his building. It's not as good as this one. Why not? Junho asked. There are no pigeons, Nova said simply. He doesn't like pigeons, Zoe said. He says they carry disease. They do carry disease, Junho said. Both twins looked at him. But they're also just pigeons, Nova said, with the philosophical patience of someone who has made her peace with the world's contradictions. They're just trying to live. Kezia, seated at the far end of the bench, giving them space while remaining within eye line, pressed her lips together to keep something in. Zoe stopped pacing. She stood in front of Junho with her hands clasped, a posture he was beginning to recognize as her preparing to say something important posture. Can I ask you something? She said. You're going to anyway. Do you have a family? The park was ordinary around them. Pigeons. Fountain. Late afternoon, light going gold across the benches. No, Junho said. Did you ever? Zoe, Kezia said, a gentle warning. It's a real question, Zoe said, not defensively. I ask real questions. Junho looked at her. No, he said. Not in the way you mean. Zoe was quiet for a moment, processing this with the seriousness she applied to everything. Then she sat down on the bench on his other side, Nova on the right, Zoe on the left, and looked straight ahead at the fountain. We don't really have one either, she said. Not anymore. Not since Mama. The word Mama landed differently than anything else she'd said. Softer. Like something she didn't take out often. She would have liked you, Nova said, to the fountain, or to Rabbit, or to no one in particular. You didn't know me, Junho said. She liked people who stayed, Nova said. She always said the ones who stay are the ones that matter. She turned and looked at him with those eyes that were too old for her face. You keep staying. Junho had nothing to say to that. He sat between these two children in a park with pigeons and a fountain and the particular golden light of a Seoul afternoon. And he felt something in the architecture of his life shift, not loudly, not dramatically, but the way foundations shift, quietly and permanently. That evening, Yirin found him at his desk. The rabbit was sitting on the corner of it. She looked at the rabbit for a long moment and said nothing about it, which was the correct decision. Marcus Moon called, she said. Junho looked up. He wants a meeting. Yirin set a folder on the desk. Apparently someone told him you had dinner with his daughters last week. Her voice was perfectly neutral. He didn't sound angry. He sounded. She paused, choosing carefully. Threatened. Junho opened the folder. Marcus Moon's face looked up at him from a profile page, confident, polished, the face of a man accustomed to controlling every room he entered. Set the meeting, Junho said. For when? Junho closed the folder. He thought about 11 days. He thought about he'll send someone. He always sends someone. He thought about two girls in yellow dresses sitting in a park explaining why pigeons matter. Tomorrow, he said. Tell him I don't rearrange my schedule. He comes to me. Yirin allowed herself the smallest smile. And if he refuses? He won't, Junho said. He's threatened. Threatened men always show up. Marcus Moon showed up at 9 the next morning. He was taller than his photograph suggested, with the practiced ease of a man who had learned to walk into rooms like he owned them. He sat across from Junho in the same way, back straight, jaw set, the performance of someone who was not intimidated. Junho had sat across from better performances. He waited. Mr. Kong, Marcus said. I'll be direct, please. My daughters are not a project. Whatever interest you've developed, you left them in a restaurant, Junho said. Not loudly, not aggressively, just a fact, delivered at room temperature, with a babysitter who stepped outside for 30 minutes. They came to my table because they were hungry and alone. Marcus's jaw tightened. Kezia made a mistake. Your daughters told me you haven't seen them in 11 days. The room went quiet in a specific way. Marcus Moon looked at Junho across the desk. Something moved behind his eyes, something that wasn't anger, that was messier and harder to name. Guilt looks different on every person. On Marcus Moon, it looked like anger turned inward, pressing against the walls of his composure. You don't know anything about my family, Marcus said. I know your daughters eat ramen and japchae. I know Nova lends her rabbit to people she thinks are lonely. I know Zoe asks real questions and accepts real answers. Junho paused. I know their mother's name was Soo-jin, and she died 14 months ago, and your response was to make yourself unavailable. He let that sit. I know more about your daughters than you think. The question is whether you know more than I do. The silence was long and complicated. Marcus Moon looked at the surface of the desk. The muscle in his jaw moved. When he looked up, something in the performance had dropped away, and what was underneath it was rawer and less comfortable to look at. I don't know how to be with them, Marcus said. The words came out like something he had never said out loud before, like they had been living in him, pressurized, for 14 months. When I look at them, I see her. Every time. And I don't, he stopped. I don't know how to look at them and not fall apart. Junho was quiet for a moment. So, instead you send someone, he said. Marcus didn't answer. He didn't need to. They know, Junho said. They're 5 years old, and they already know. Nova told me your wife liked people who stayed. They remember everything she taught them. He leaned forward slightly. You're falling apart anyway, Marcus. You're just doing it somewhere they can't see you. And they're paying the price for your privacy. Marcus Moon left an hour later. He didn't make promises. He didn't have a sudden transformation in the middle of Junho's office and swear to be a better father. Real people don't work that way. And whatever Marcus Moon was, he was real, flawed and fractured and genuinely lost inside his own grief. But he left differently than he arrived. The performance was gone. He walked out without the straight back and the set jaw, just a man carrying something heavy, finally acknowledging the weight. Yirin appeared in the doorway after he left. How did it go? Honestly, Junho said. She nodded. She understood that was the whole answer. Junho looked at the rabbit on the corner of his desk. Nova had asked him to return it today, and he would. He would go to the park again, and Nova would take Rabbit back with the solemnity of someone reclaiming something important. And Zoe would immediately ask him a question he wasn't prepared for, and Kezia would watch from the end of the bench with her careful eyes. He would go, not because he had decided what any of this was, not because he had a name for the thing that had shifted in him at a restaurant table 4 days ago, but because 2 children had asked him to stay, and he had. And now staying had become the one thing in his complicated, dangerous, fortress-built life that felt uncomplicated. He picked up the rabbit. Something that's yours for a little while, even if it's not really yours. He thought about that, about what it meant to belong to something temporarily, about how the most permanent things in his life had all started as temporary. The first job, the first loyalty, the empire built piece by piece from nothing. About how the most important decisions rarely felt like decisions at the time. They just felt like showing up. He stood, put on his jacket, and told Taesung to drive him to Sabiol kindergarten. It was 3 o'clock. He wasn't going to be late. Like this video if this story gave you everything you needed today. Comment stayed. If Junho showing up for those girls made you feel something. Subscribe for more stories that will grip you from the first second to the last.